In 1930, Germany is in the midst of the Great Depression. Factories are closing. Unemployment is at 4.5 million. People are starving. Chaos has returned to the streets. One man has predicted this all along. Adolf Hitler, the one-time jailbird, looks like a prophet. And he says there's only one solution. Put him in charge. But do the German people really know what they're getting? This is the story of how Adolf Hitler subverts the democratic process and finally seizes power in Germany. As Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party prepare themselves for the 1930 general election in September, Germany is in economic meltdown. Hitler blames it on the democratic Weimar government imposed on Germany after the First World War. He'd warned about the dangers of relying on American loans before the Wall Street crash. Now the loans have been called in. The country's in a desperate situation. And all the government can offer is austerity.
The policy is cuts, 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 and more cuts. And this depresses the economy and makes things worse and increases the unemployment. Germany looks like it's in a never-ending cycle of boom and depression, misery and high unemployment.
But for Hitler, this disastrous situation is an opportunity.
The person who's cheering the most is Hitler, because he now looks like a guru. He's actually predicted that this would happen, and it's actually happened. And of course, a lot of people are swayed when somebody is proved right.
Hitler and his propaganda man, Joseph Goebbels, have a master plan to win power in Germany by democratic means. Goebbels throws himself into a campaign designed to appeal directly to the suffering German people.
It was very blunt and very simple. So, bread, work, freedom, direct slogans offering a lofty and noble vision of things that were lacking in Germany.
There's a famous poster, and it just shows a series of people who look in the middle of depression. It says, "Germany's last hope, Hitler."
As part of his strategy, Goebbels sends Hitler on speaking tours across the country, traveling from town to town. Using his newly polished skills as an orator, they convince people they can make Germany strong again.
You've got to look at the position of your average German citizen who's feeling impoverished. The future looks very uncertain. How am I going to feed my children? Am I going to keep my job? And you look at this newfangled Weimar form of government and you're thinking it's not really giving the answers.
Goebbels' brilliantly orchestrated campaign allows Hitler to present himself as new and different.
None of the Weimar politicians had an ounce of the charisma that Hitler brought to the party. They were essentially bourgeois, middle-of-the-road, conventional politicians. Hitler swept all that away. He looked different, especially when he was in speaking mode, or standing in a car saluting his stormtroopers marching past. He looked little less than a god. And Germans had never seen anything like this before.
It's not just his image. Hitler has radical new policies. He promises to turn the economy around by refusing to pay war compensation to the Allies, as set out in the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War. And he promises desperate farmers in the countryside, who've seen the collapse of agricultural prices, a better life.
He says all of this misery that is heaped on rural communities is due to the Wall Street crash. Come to the Nazi Party and we'll give you a new deal for the rural voter.
Above all, he vows to put the unemployed back to work. But he also uses the opportunity to focus on his real agenda: the Jews. He blames the economic crisis on them.
He said it was all the Jewish plot. This notion that's always been there. Our problems, they might be less at times, more intense at others, but they're always there and they're always Jewish in origin. The great bankers of the world are Jewish. It's a world international plot of the Jews to bring cultured civilizations under their control. People were ready to believe it. And of course he can say, get rid of the Jews and your jobs will come back.
When the election results come in that September, the Nazi strategy works. They win almost 6.5 million votes. At the last election in 1928, they'd managed only 810,000. Their representation in the Reichstag, Germany's parliament, grows from 12 seats to 107. It's just 36 seats fewer than the biggest party in the ruling coalition, the Social Democrats. The Nazis are now the second most popular party in Germany. With the governing coalition riddled with instability and infighting, Hitler knows that there will be another election soon. So he and Goebbels set about capitalizing on their success by increasing the Nazi Party's profile.
Hitler said, I want to be noticed. I want Germany to notice us. He said, propaganda comes first, ideas come second.
Their very best propaganda tool is the rally. Since 1927, the Nazis have held their annual rally in the medieval city of Nuremberg. 100 miles north of Munich, it's one of the areas which is the most sympathetic to the Nazi cause. By the early 1930s, and in the years that follow, the rallies reach a truly colossal scale.
Hitler seemed to know instinctively what would work and what would hit the masses.
Venues decorated with flowers and Nazi symbols are surrounded on all sides by the uniformed SA brown shirts.
You would have men marching in immaculate ranks in perfect uniforms. You would have red and white swastikas on huge banners.
Down to the smallest detail of insignia, medals, songs, music, marching. They paid great attention to all of this, and they sought through this to portray the Nazi Party as one of order, unity, of loyalty, of discipline.
For added drama, many of the rallies reach their climax at night.
Nazis made very effective use of special lighting effects. At nighttime, there were torchlit processions. This was not just a formal political event, it was a spiritual coming together of the nation and the culmination of an almost religious experience.
With the masses in eager anticipation, finally comes the main event, the arrival of Hitler. It's another piece of carefully constructed audience manipulation.
I don't think there's any record of ever starting a speech at the scheduled time. He made people, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes 40, sometimes an hour, hour and a half. Heighten the expectation. When will he come? Is he coming? And then the whisper would go round, yes, he's coming, he's approaching. And this buzz would go around the great auditorium.
Then, from the back of the arena, Hitler would walk in, the floodlights would come on him.
After an accompaniment of drums, fanfares and Nazi salutes, Hitler then starts his speech.
Discover the past with exclusive military history documentaries and ad-free podcasts presented by world-renowned historians, all on History Hit. Watch them on your smart TV or on the go with your mobile device. Download the app now to watch everything, from the gripping story of the Band of Brothers to Operation Barbarossa and D-Day. Immerse yourself in the dramatic stories of this remarkable era by signing up via the link in the description.
He whispered to begin with. People strained to hear him.
He knows how to conduct the crowd. It's kind of quite quiet. You need to turn the volume up. Is he stuttering? You're kind of worried that he's forgotten what he's going to say. So you feel slightly sympathetic towards him.
And then build up, get slightly faster. And then the gestures would come in. The flung out arm, the hand going back. And that, he used to do that. Like, as if there was an intensity in him that had to be expressed.
This is all perfect theatre, and it looks so powerful, and no one else has really done this before.
And of course, if you're halfway towards him anyway, it's enrapturing.
At the end of the speeches, Hitler is left drained and bathed in sweat. He gives the impression that he has given all for his congregation. Floating voters, who have been skeptical of the Nazis, are won over.
And nearly all those who observed this said, you were carried away by it. You could not but be impressed. You came as a doubter, you went away as a devotee.
But if the adoring fans think they know him, they don't. Behind the scenes, a scandal is brewing in his personal life, which is about to threaten his newfound popularity. Hitler's public image may be one of a man selflessly devoted to his cause. But the reality is very different. In private, Hitler has fallen in love. The object of his affection is the 23-year-old daughter of his half-sister, Angela. Her name is Gaily Raubel. In 1929, Angela had come to work for him at his plush new apartment, number 16, Prince Regentenplatz.
Originally, Gaily's mother was brought from Austria as Hitler's housekeeper, and Gaily came along as part of the deal. But Hitler soon became totally obsessed by this young woman.
He was very, very fond of her. He took her everywhere. They would go out to a cafe in town, and she would be there. Wherever he went, you know, there would be Gaily.
Hitler even supports his niece's musical aspirations. paying for Gailey to have singing lessons.
This relationship, despite the fact they're basically related and there's 2 decades between them, almost seems to be actually a fairly nice, wholesome, sweet relationship. They're going for drives together, they go eating out together.
Even today, the precise nature of the relationship remains the subject of speculation.
It seems it wasn't sexual. It may sound odd to say that, but it was possession without the sex bit, if there can be such a phenomenon. Fascinating that a man with that degree of power should have been so restrained in that way. It may be he simply was asexual.
But by 1931, Hitler's relationship with Gailey starts to turn sour. Naturally flirtatious and vivacious, Gailey's behavior makes him jealous.
She was a normal, red-blooded young woman, wanted to go out, wanted to dance, wanted to wear makeup. All these things were anathema to Hitler's ideas of what a woman should do, should look like, should conduct herself.
He starts to take too much interest in who she's talking to. For example, his chauffeur, Emil Morris, starts to become close to Gailey.
Hitler, when he finds out about the relationship, goes berserk. Now, Hitler's well known for going berserk, and Emil Morris is on the receiving end. Hitler, threatens to shoot him. This is the turning point in the relationship, clearly, between him and Gailey.
From now on, everything Gailey does has to be monitored and controlled. If Gailey leaves the apartment, Hitler makes sure she's chaperoned and home early. But as Hitler's possessiveness grows, so does Gailey's unhappiness. By September 1931, the situation reaches a head.
Gailey has become increasingly despondent and miserable, as indeed you would be if you were imprisoned by a man that she would describe as a monster. Hitler wouldn't let her go anywhere, and it seemed that she had somehow developed a relationship with a young man from Vienna.
It's not just that she's met a young man. It's who he is.
The biggest crime in Hitler's eyes about this young man was that he was Jewish. So this is obviously not a fantastic relationship for Gailey to be trying to have behind the back of Hitler.
Matters reach crisis point. On the 18th of September, Hitler is preparing to leave for a Nazi meeting in Nuremberg when Gailey becomes hysterical.
She wants to go and do singing lessons in Vienna. It all builds up. People start to hear blazing rows inside the flat. The next door neighbour says at one point Hitler leaves the flat, turns round as he gets into his chauffeur-driven Mercedes and shouts back, "You're not going to Vienna," and that's the end of it.
For Gailey, the consequences of the argument are fatal. The tragic death of the 23-year-old music student makes news worldwide. Immediately, rumors circulate about the rising politician's relationship with his niece.
There were reports that she had bruises over her body that may have come from being punched. These weren't authenticated or corroborated. But it's possible that he lashed out at her. I wouldn't say that's proven, but it's possible he did that. It does fit his possessiveness.
Rumors detailing Hitler's sex life are also leaked.
She was supposed to have told Emil Morris that Hitler made her pose for pornographic pictures, naked, standing over him, and even defecating on him, that Hitler was a coprophiliac. These rumours were seized upon naturally by Hitler's political opponents, especially by the Social Democrats, and they were published in various social democratic magazines. Never proved, I must emphasise that.
Worst of all are the suggestions that Hitler has either had Gailey murdered or that he's killed her himself. For the would-be Führer and for the Nazis, the potential political fallout from Gailey's death is enormous. So the party's propaganda team act quickly to prevent a scandal. To save Hitler's reputation, members of his inner circle say that Gailey had been playing with a gun and had accidentally killed herself. But behind closed doors, Hitler is devastated by Gailey's death. Friends fear he might give up politics altogether. Some, that he might take his own life. Confessing to those close to him that Gailey is the only woman he has ever truly loved, Hitler commissions sculptures and portraits of her, and orders that her bedroom is preserved exactly as she left it.
Hitler turned the room where Gailey died into a shrine for her. He would actually go into the room and spend long hours contemplating her picture and thinking about her. She was, you could say, the one love of his life, and it's maybe a testament to Hitler's perversity that the one love of his life was a girl young enough to be his daughter, who was in fact his niece.
2 days after Gailey's funeral, a heartbroken Hitler visits Gailey's grave. And to the relief of those around him, he finally shakes himself out of his anguish. In public, the party's PR strategy seems to work. The German people give Hitler the benefit of the doubt, and he emerges from what could have been a scandal virtually unscathed. And to avoid anything like this happening in the future, Hitler ensures he's never seen to have any sort of close relationship with a woman again.
The death of Gailey made him realise that actually if he was going to set himself up as this kind of messiah-like figure, he really couldn't be publicly associated with women. He felt that had he had a wife or female figure in his life, it would have reduced his appeal to German women at large.
In keeping with his strategy, Hitler's next girlfriend will be hidden from all but his inner circle.
Eva Braun is kept in the background. She is never seen in any photographs with Hitler. For the public, Hitler is married to Germany.
As Hitler readies himself for the next phase in his quest to seize power, he's more determined than ever. His propaganda machine relaunches him, this time aiming at the highest office in Germany. Hitler stands in the presidential elections. His key rival candidates are communist Ernst Thälmann and the existing president, Germany's most illustrious statesman and most famous war hero, Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg.
Hitler's grown enormously in self-confidence with every success that the Nazis have had. Here is a man, an unknown Austrian, a foreigner in many people's eyes, standing against the wooden titan of Hindenburg, the great gigantic figure, larger than life, who had loomed over German lives ever since World War I.
Hitler wavers for a bit should he challenge this great popular figure, Hindenburg, and in the end he decides to do it.
The Nazi Party coordinate yet another campaign to indoctrinate the masses. In a never-before-seen strategy, the Nazis embark on a plan to reach almost the entire German population.
Goebbels devised a campaign device called Hitler Over Germany, in which Hitler flew from town to town and city to city in a plane, and the troops were on the ground waiting to see the Führer descend from the skies like some sort of avenging angel falling down from the clouds, and it made an enormous impact.
Working around the clock with demonic energy, during the campaign, Hitler makes 20 major speeches in less than a week.
Exhausting. I mean, he'd collapse after the speech and just sleep until the next meeting. Huge physical effort on his part. And if at any point he becomes a man of the people, I think you could say that was the time.
When the presidential elections take place, he sees the effects. Hindenburg polls just over 50%. The communist candidate, 10%. But Hitler takes nearly 37%. He has run the much-respected Hindenburg a close second.
Hitler loses the 1932 presidential election, but in fact he wins it, because now he is unquestionably the most popular civilian leader in Germany. He's now got 13.4 million people. He's put on 7 million more voters in 2 years. 7 million more Germans, out of their own free will, have moved towards him.
And he comes up with yet another new tactic to help him win people over. He produces a series of postcards and coffee table books together with Nazi photographer Heinrich Hoffmann. Their purpose is to portray Hitler as a normal man.
Hoffmann's images weren't just formal shots of Hitler standing on a podium lecturing to regimented masses. Much more frequent were pictures that showed Hitler as an ordinary man. Hitler in Bavarian folklore outfit, sitting in the woods, having a picnic. Hitler playing with the dog. Hitler wearing a raincoat, an ordinary shirt and a battered hat, doing not very much at all. It was very calculated. He wanted to be seen as someone who paused, who enjoyed the leisure to think and to reflect. Really a man of the people.
After the presidential elections, Hitler sets out to build on his growing popularity. He gets the chance because the governing coalition is terminally unstable, triggering a spate of elections.
In 1932, it seemed that the German people were involved in a permanent election campaign. There were so many elections, national and local, and this is a clear sign that no party could rule in the Reichstag, that democracy had run into the sand and that it did not provide stability.
2 elections in July and November of 1932 see the Nazis virtually double their support from 1930. They are now the biggest party in the Reichstag. It's not enough to take power, but it is enough to paralyze the government. Hitler piles the pressure on the ailing President Hindenburg and demands to be made Chancellor, Germany's equivalent of Prime Minister. But Hindenburg doesn't trust him, and he flatly refuses. Hindenburg only offers him the position of Vice-Chancellor. Hitler turns it down. He wants power on his own terms. So he sets about wooing Germany's most influential people.
He brings together a whole group of industrialists. He said to them, you know, you have only prosperity to look forward to under us. We are not a threat. If we join together, I as a great political leader and you as great industrialists, we have a great future together. We can work together. He meets the army leaders and says to them, I was a soldier, I understand you. The army is critical in the new Germany that we're going to create. You are the strength, you are the defense of Germany. And he wins them over.
Hitler's quest to broaden his appeal is successful. The Nazis are no longer just the choice of the working classes. White-collar voters like teachers, engineers and lawyers are turning to Hitler, fearful that a communist government will tax them to feed the poor.
It's what some call the Mittelstand in German, that middle section, the section that matters, Hitler said. Respectable people. Old Germans, if you like, in that sense. Young in age, but old in terms of their reference back to German values, German cultural standards and so on.
Someone else Hitler manages to impress is former Chancellor Franz von Papen. He's dismissed from power in November 1932, following a vote of no confidence. Though not a Nazi, he is sympathetic to Hitler and organizes a secret meeting between key members of Hitler's inner circle and the president's son, German Army Major Oskar von Hindenburg.
This is a really important meeting because at that meeting, Oskar, who's been sceptical about whether Hitler will rule without becoming a dictator, he starts to get convinced by Hitler. Hitler charms him.
In return for promotion in the army and 5,000 acres of land, Oskar agrees to convince his father to hand the chancellorship to Hitler. Crucially, von Papen reassures both President Hindenburg and his son that he can keep Hitler under control. Within a week, the president concedes. Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany. But the Nazis still don't have a majority government. So, Hitler quickly calls another election. To guarantee a majority, he needs to win over the left-leaning voters and overcome the communists. Within days, events conspire to help him. Just 6 days before the general election, Germany's parliament building, the Reichstag, is set on fire.
The culprit is swiftly arrested, and it emerges he's a young Dutchman called Marinus van der Lubbe.
Van der Lubbe is a known communist.
He is the classic lone nut, if you like, the kind of Lee Harvey Oswald of this situation, where we don't know whether he acted alone. All we know is that once the fire was underway, nobody was going to try and put it out, because straight away the Nazis could see that this fire could be exploited against the communists.
President Hindenburg's response to the fire is to declare a state of emergency across Germany. Hitler takes advantage. He manages to convince Hindenburg to let him suppress the communists. As Chancellor, Hitler can send in the state police alongside the SA Brownshirts and the SS.
The SA and the SS are let loose. with public backing, because most of the public think this is a communist plot. The burning of the Reichstag, this great symbol of German constitutionalism, has been attacked by the communists.
The SA and the SS are unbound. The SA are able to pretty much attack and kidnap their communist opponent, drag them off to torture cellars, and submit them to violence, terror and extortion.
4,000 communist politicians and their supporters are beaten up, imprisoned and murdered, destroying them as a political force. But even that isn't enough to win Hitler power. In the general election of March 1933, the Nazis take just under 44% of the vote, agonizingly short of an overall majority. So Hitler decides to find a way around the democratic process. What he comes up with is the Enabling Act. In a time of crisis, it allows him to temporarily suspend the constitution and to take total control in Germany for the next 4 years.
If it's voted in favour by an absolute majority, that will allow Hitler to transfer power to himself so that he can enact law without the need to use Parliament.
But to pass the act, the Nazis need a 2/3 majority in Parliament. Hitler now starts schmoozing the key German Catholic Centre Party within the coalition. He reassures them that their party will continue to exist, that the Church's civil liberties will be preserved, as will Catholic involvement with German culture and education. Hitler sets out his case for the Enabling Act in a speech to Parliament. He promises to end unemployment and pledges to promote peace with France, Britain and Russia. When the by now sick and weakening President Hindenburg accepts the act, the Reichstag are invited to vote on it. All of Hitler's hard work finally pays off. With a massive 441 to 94, the Nazis gain the 2/3 majority they need to pass the Enabling Act. Ironically, the democratic process has handed Hitler the power to do anything he wants, without parliamentary approval.
It gives Hitler basically dictatorial powers, powers that no leader in Germany has had for a very long time.
Hitler has at last got the authority he has craved for so long. Now, he must hold on to it. He starts by addressing the threats to his power, both inside and outside his party. The biggest internal threat is Ernst Röhm. Röhm is one of the earliest Nazi Party members and a close friend of Hitler. He is also the founder and leader of the SA Brown Shirts, the party's army of thugs whose bully boy tactics have been so significant in Hitler's rise.
There was a real bid for power from within the Nazi Party, from the Brown Shirts. They, with some justification, had seen themselves as the battering ram that had opened the gates of power for the Nazis.
By 1934, the SA are 4.5 million strong and massively outnumber the German army. The team around Hitler become increasingly concerned that Röhm will use them to seize power for himself.
Röhm starts to make speeches calling for the SA to become a people's army. And this makes the German army very nervous indeed.
And there were rumours, strong rumours, that Röhm was waiting for the moment to seize power himself in a coup, remove Hitler and govern as the head of this very powerful force.
And Röhm has committed another crime. Germany is still an intensely conservative country. And Röhm is a homosexual. In secret, Hermann Göring, now Prussian Minister of the Interior, and Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, ask Himmler's deputy, Reinhard Heydrich, to assemble a dossier to discredit Röhm.
By the end of June 1934, amazingly, the evidence that Röhm is a traitor has been found. There's this documentation that shows he's the recipient of millions of marks from the French government to try and overthrow Hitler on their behalf. Of course, it's completely manufactured evidence.
Armed with the information from Göring, Heydrich, and Himmler, Hitler organizes a deadly trap. He orders all the SA leaders to attend a meeting in the pretty holiday town of Bad Wiessee in the far south of Germany. In the early hours, Hitler, some of his entourage, and a couple of state police arrive at a lakeside hotel in the town.
About 6:30 in the morning, Hitler charges into the hotel, brandishing a pistol.
In a scene which would astonish the German people, who believed they were voting for a respectable politician, the Chancellor of Germany can't resist taking matters into his own hands. In a sign of his fury over Röhm's supposed treachery, Hitler personally leads the team to arrest him. He doesn't even wait for his backup, the SS, to arrive.
He makes his way to Röhm's room, opens the door and says, "Get up, Ernst, you're under arrest for high treason." The sleep, dazzled and bewildered Röhm doesn't understand what's going on.
Now, in the next door room, there's another senior SA man, and with the SA man in bed is a young SA man. And of course, this is deemed to be flagrant and sign of how degraded the SA had become and how corrupt it had become.
Over the next 24 hours, 200 other senior SA officers are rounded up. Many are shot. Others, including Röhm, are sent to Munich's Stadelheim prison. But it isn't just the internal opponents Hitler deals with. He and Goebbels have been compiling a list of political opponents and old enemies they also consider to be traitors. Now they trigger the next purge. A code-worded phone call from Goebbels to Göring sets in motion what will become one of the most notorious events in the history of the Nazis. The following day, Hitler hosts a tea party in the garden of the Chancellery in Berlin for his cabinet and their families.
While this tea party is going on, the playing out of The Night of the Long Knives is almost pure Godfather 2. It is like a gangster film. There are people being massacred. I mean, literally just butchered, shot, killed, and beheaded.
Amongst those killed are Gustav von Kahr, one of the triumvirate who had sabotaged the beer hall putsch in 1923.
He was hauled out of his home, taken to a forest in Dachau outside Munich where the concentration camp was, and battered to death with axes. former Chancellor, General von Schleicher, who is shot down in his own home when he answers the door, and his wife, who tries to throw herself across in front of the bullets. She's cut down by a hail of bullets too. A music critic called Willy Schmidt was mistaken for an SA man called Willy Schmidt and was shot down in Munich. There were lots of cases like this.
During that afternoon, Hitler gives the order to kill Ernst Röhm. He's shot dead by the SS in his cell.
At one point during this tea, someone's meant to have come in and just gently informed him that everything had been carried out, and he just nods.
It was Hitler's settling of accounts, the Night of Long Knives, with the right and with the left. And it was serving notice on the world that Germany was now ruled by gangsters.
The Night of the Long Knives is announced by Hitler himself in a speech to the government on the 13th of July, 1934. Official records state that only 77 have died, but really, it's 400. And Hitler now justifies what he has done.
In this hour, I was responsible for the fate of the German people, and thereby I became the supreme judge of the German people. I gave the order to shoot the ringleaders and their treason.
Hitler's actions and words hammer home that he is now judge and jury, with the power to decide who lives and who dies.
The Night of Long Knives gave a notice not only to Germany, but to the world that you oppose the Nazis the slightest whim at the very peril of your own life. If they were prepared to cut down those who'd once been nearest and dearest to them, they were prepared to cut down anyone.
2 weeks later, the 87-year-old President Hindenburg passes away. Hitler abolishes the presidency and declares himself supreme leader of Germany. The Führer